What do you think social media's greatest advantage is? Is it the speed of the story, or is it getting more grassroots, authentic footage or information?
Yeah, I think it's because all of a sudden you've got access to all of this. So previously you might be on the ground and it would be who you managed to stop and talk to or film. Now, by doing an advanced search, you get all of this content from lots of different voices, lots of different angles. So I think it's just that wealth of information. So this idea that every news event creates a community, you have that community that you can be part of. So I think that's the biggest shift.
Do you think that people will ever be charged to use social media? That was something that came out in the talk. And how do you think that will affect news gathering? Do you think that people will be less likely to use social media, so you'll have less, sources, or how do you think that would ever?
Yeah, I don't think that social media will ever be able to charge. I mean, I made a joke in there about I would pay £30 for Twitter, but that's not a business model for them. But I do think this question of will users charge other people to use their content, I think we will get to that stage when people get more savvy and say, hello, I just thought this was me sharing a photo, and all of a sudden I see people selling newspapers off the back of it. Hang on, I want some money for that. So I think that will shift. I don't think that Facebook is ever going to say pay me, because they've got 840 million people who use it every day. They're not going to start paying.
There was a little bit of talk about underreported countries, actually, from the panel. So I was wondering, do you think that in underreported countries, do you think social media is more or less effective? Because, is it because therefore they need it more because they need to get the story out, because they don't have maybe as many traditional forms of media covering them? Or?
Yeah, I think this applies to countries, but it also applies to, for example, sports. So sports that get annoyed that they never appear on the BBC are really, really active online because that's all that they can do. The same in South America, huge social media activity in South America. So I'm sitting there thinking, why do we never hear, there's no South American coverage, but at the same time you only have to do a small search and you see these amazing stories every single day, but they haven't managed to push out into kind of our Western news values. And that's what I hope will change, is that when you've got access to all of these stories, all of a sudden it's about what's interesting in these different places.
Is there a danger, not just in terms of news gathering, but also distributing news? So obviously with Coney it was there were discussions about the confusion behind, when they were talking about things in an accurate and fair way. So is there a danger with yourselves producing news that then gets distributed at such a high speed that if you have got something wrong or you've misrepresented something, that could be a danger to your credibility? Is that the other side of it?
Yeah, that's definitely an issue. But those people who are critical about Coney, what I would say is, that 30 minutes had massive holes in it, real flaws. What was amazing and just heartwarming was the level of discussion afterwards about that's not right, have you seen this? This is what really happens, here's a link to that. I hadn't seen that level of discussion about an African country ever. So for me, it was only a good thing, but I think what Coney learned is a lesson to everybody, which is you have to get everything right. You have to fact check everything even harder than before, because previously you might do a TV broadcast at 6 o'clock and somebody in one of the rooms might be like, I'm not sure that's true, but it doesn't go anywhere, whereas now you blog about it, that gets passed around and your credibility sinks.
At the minute, I believe there was some survey recently about news, the main source of news being TV broadcasting still, at the moment as it stands.
Yeah.
Obviously you said people still consume those in different ways. When do you think in the future online, or do you think in the future online will become the main source of news for people?
I think it is for certain demographics already. There are definitely younger people, this sounds like, but there is definitely a demographic, if you look at all the audience statistics, who are spending all of their time online and they are not watching television. And even when I was at Cardiff, which was now 6 years ago, my journalism students weren't buying newspapers, they weren't watching TV news, they were listening to Radio 1, so they got their news from Newsbeat, but more importantly they were getting everything from Facebook, and that was 6 years ago. That has just increased. So, and you've got generations growing up who aren't necessarily thinking the BBC is where I have to get my news from, because they've got news from everywhere else. So as a brand, what do you do when you don't have that kind of legacy, or that, of course you come to us, and that's why the news organisations are really worried.